I came back from Montana 11 days early and found my best friend standing in my kitchen at noon on a Tuesday, wearing my old Vanderbilt hoodie and holding a cordless drill like she hadn't yet decided what to do with it. For about 3 seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Hadley Morse looked over her shoulder toward the hallway, looked back at me, and said very quietly, "Don't go in the back room." Now I know how that sounds. A man hears that sentence after 5 weeks away, and his brain does not choose calm. It starts running a highlight reel of worst-case scenarios: mold, situation, a gas leak, a structural collapse, a second person living inside his walls who'd been there the whole time and he never noticed. I'd been gone long enough that anything felt possible. I'm Nash Everett, 27 years old, freelance location sound recordist, which is a title that sounds impressive until I explain it means I hold a boom pole for 12 hours in 30-degree weather so other people can make documentary about wildlife. I'd been up in the Bitterroot Valley for 5 weeks recording ambient sound for a nature series, and the whole shoot had collapsed when a generator failure wiped 3 days of recordings and the director called an emergency regroup in Portland. The production company offered to put me up in a hotel until things resumed. I said no. My flight home to Nashville cost me an extra $200 and entirely have. But I was tired of waxed paper pillowcases and the particular loneliness of complimentary continental breakfast. Hadley had agreed to stay at my apartment while I was gone. She was 26, 1 year younger, a freelance graphic designer who worked entirely from her laptop and needed reliable Wi-Fi more than a fixed address. Her building's router had been unreliable for months. Mine never stuttered. She brought her succulents. I gave her a key and told her not to let the basil die. We'd been close for about 18 months, since a mutual friend hired her to design an EP cover for his band and hired me to do sound for the recording session. We'd both ended up crammed into a tiny home studio in East Nashville, arguing about whether the kick drum was sitting right in the mix. Hadley thought it was too muddy. She was correct. She didn't let me forget it for approximately 6 months. That was Hadley. She had opinions the way other people had allergies, constantly, involuntarily, and with an intensity that was inconvenient until it turned out she was right. And now she was standing in my kitchen with a cordless drill and an expression I couldn't quite place. I set my gear bag on the floor. Nash. Hadley. Why are you here? I live here. She glanced toward the hallway. You're not supposed to be back until the 14th. Generator went down. Shoot's on hold. I looked at the drill. Why are you holding that? She looked at it like she was surprised to find it in her hand. Home improvement. Of what? Things. She said the word carefully, the way you do when you mean one specific thing and are hoping the category is broad enough to cover it. I looked around. My kitchen was cleaner than I'd ever kept it. The kind of clean that has corners and edges, not my version of clean where I wiped the counter until it looked cleaner than it was. There were 3 Amazon boxes broken down flat beside the recycling bin. My mail was stacked near the window, sorted into 2 labeled piles in Hadley's handwriting. Actual mail and catalogs for someone who has never met you. I tried not to love that second pile. I loved it immediately. You could have texted me, she said. I did, from the Memphis layover. My phone is in the back room. Convenient. It was charging. On a Tuesday. Phones charge on Tuesdays. Hadley. She winced, and the humor left her face. That was the part that stopped me. Because Hadley never let the humor run out. She kept it on hand the way some people keep emergency cash, specifically for situations where she felt cornered. If the jokes were gone, something underneath them needed room. I'd seen that once before. Last spring, when a client she'd spent 4 months working with dissolved their startup overnight and didn't pay her final invoice. She'd made 3 jokes about it at a coffee shop and then gone very still and stared at her oat milk latte like it owed her an apology. That was when I understood. The jokes were armor. She wasn't just caught, she was scared. I stepped closer, not toward the hallway, toward her. Are you okay? Her shoulders dropped half an inch. That was the thing about Hadley. Tease her and she'd fence with you indefinitely. Ask her a real question, and she had no defense for it. I'm okay, she said. I just really need you not to go in the back room yet. Yet. Yes. So at some point, I'll be permitted to access a room in my own apartment. I'm hoping to negotiate a timeline. Do I need to submit something in writing? Closed-toe shoes would help, honestly. I laughed before I could stop myself. She did too, but hers came out uneven, like something was sitting on top of it. I'd missed that sound more than I'd admitted to myself on the flight home. Missed the way she could make a situation go sideways just by standing in it. Missed the expression she made when she was concentrating. That slight furrow, like the whole world, was one bad kerning choice from collapse. Missed how she sent me voice memos of weird sounds she thought I'd want to sample. Missed, if I was being honest in a way I'd been actively avoiding, how my apartment felt inhabited when she was in it, and slightly wrong when she wasn't. Standing there with afternoon light through the window, and Hadley holding a drill in my old hoodie, I had one clear thought I hadn't let myself have in 5 weeks. I want to stay. Not because Montana had been hard, because she was the reason the apartment felt like something worth returning to. That scared me almost as much as whatever was in the back room. Nash, she said, you went quiet. I'm thinking. That's never good. Tell me what you did. She exhaled, something ambitious. How ambitious? The kind where I had good intentions, my uncle's truck, and unsupervised access to a Home Depot. I looked at the drill again. That sentence has multiple liability issues. I was going to finish before you got back. Finish what? She opened her mouth. Something thudded against the floor in the back room. We both went still. Please, I said, tell me that was a toolbox. Mostly. Hadley. I can explain. A second thud followed, softer, with the slow scrape of something heavy being repositioned on hardwood. I started toward the hallway. Hadley stepped into my path, not dramatically, not with her arms out like a movie character. She just moved and put one hand flat against my chest. It stopped me more effectively than a locked door. Her hand was warm through my shirt. She was close enough that I could smell sawdust and the cedar shampoo she'd been using since I'd known her. For a moment, whatever was happening in the back room felt genuinely less important than the fact that Hadley Morse was standing 3 inches away, breathing slightly faster than usual, asking me to stay still, with a touch she probably hadn't meant to make. Then she noticed. Her hand dropped. Sorry. Don't be. The words came out before I could soften them. Her chin lifted slightly. We stood in the particular silence of two people who have said something they can't unsay and haven't yet decided what to do about it. It's Walt, she said. My brain sorted through the options. Your Uncle Walt. Yes. Why is your uncle in my back room? Hadley closed her eyes briefly. Because I underestimated drywall anchors. That is not a complete explanation. She exhaled through her nose. Your spare room. The one you use for storage. The one you've been saying for 2 years you were going to set up as a proper home studio so you'd stop paying $60 an hour at that place off Charlotte Pike. I knew the place. 40 minutes each way, and the owner kept scheduling my sessions back to back with a podcast about cryptocurrency. You always mixed your remote audio jobs in there on a folding table, Hadley said. With blankets hung on the walls that kept sliding down. Your cable management looked like abstract expressionism. It was a system. It was a cry for help. Hadley, you never framed your video calls from that side of the room. Her voice had gone quieter. You always moved your laptop to the kitchen first, I noticed. Of course she had. That was the other thing about Hadley. She noticed everything. The way I went vague in conversation when money was tight because I didn't want to seem like I was complaining. The fact that I always said yes to extra travel days without mentioning I was also exhausted. The way I kept a photo on my kitchen shelf of me and my dad at a Predators game when I was 12, even though we hadn't spoken much in years, because keeping it out felt like holding on to something that might still be fixable. She knew me in the kind of light people don't usually get to see. It bothered you, she said. Not the mess. The way it felt like you were still treating this apartment like somewhere you were just passing through. I looked toward the hallway. In my head, I could picture the spare room as I'd left it. A folding table, a milk crate of tangled cables, acoustic foam panels leaning against the wall where I'd been meaning to mount them for a year, a window I'd covered with a moving blanket held up by painter's tape. I asked Walt to help mount the panels properly, she said. He said the wall studs were in weird places. Then he said while he was here he could put in a proper anchor system. Then I thought, since the walls were already being worked on, you expanded the project. The scope evolved. Into what, exactly? Her face went pink, and there it was. The thing she hadn't said yet. The reason she needed me not to go in before she was ready. Hadley, I said quieter now, what did you put in my back room? She didn't answer right away. She walked to the counter, set down the drill too carefully, and turned back. I made you a place to come home to, she said. A real one. That landed somewhere I hadn't expected. Not because of foam panels or cable runs or whatever Walt was mounting back there. Because come home to implied the returning was the point. That the room existed for the arrival, not just the function. For most of my adult life, home had been a logistical problem. Somewhere to store gear between jobs. A mailing address. My apartment in Nashville was the longest I'd stayed anywhere since I was a kid, and I'd spent most of that time treating it like an extended layover. Hadley knew that too. Why? I asked. She gave a short, uneven laugh. Because you record the sound of places that make people feel something. You spend weeks in the middle of nowhere capturing audio that makes a living room audience feel like they're standing in it. And then you come back here and mix it on a folding table under a moving blanket. The blanket had good absorption properties. The blanket was from a Marriott. I've had it for years. That's somehow worse. Her expression flickered. You deserve a room that sounds right. Not just functional, sounds right. You know the difference. You talk about the difference constantly. I did know the difference. A room that sounds right has a specific quality. Not silence, but a settled stillness, like the air is paying attention. I'd tried to explain it to Hadley once, badly, over drinks on her rooftop, and she'd listened the entire time without checking her phone. That still doesn't answer why, I said. She looked at the floor between us. The kitchen got very quiet. I missed you, she said. Simple, 3 words with no performance behind them. Something shifted in my chest. I missed you too. No, she looked up. I mean, I missed you in a specific way, the kind that made me annoyed at your coffee maker. My coffee maker. It kept sitting there making perfectly functional coffee like everything was normal and you weren't gone. She said it like confessing to a minor crime, which I know is an unhinged thing to feel about an appliance. I laughed, soft and involuntary, her mouth curved, then settled. I know what we are, she said. I know you trust me with your key and your basil and your forwarded mail. And I might have made things weird by turning your spare room into evidence. Evidence of what? That I pay attention to you. She said it like it was almost too much to admit out loud. More than I'm probably supposed to. I took one step toward her, then another. There was barely any space left between us. Hadley, I said. I came home 11 days early and found you in my kitchen in my hoodie with a cordless drill, telling me your uncle is in my spare room and that my coffee maker made you sad. I'm not exactly upset. That's a disturbing summary of events. It's accurate. It makes me sound like I need monitoring. It makes you sound like someone who shouldn't be left unsupervised near a hardware store. She nudged my foot with hers. I was emotionally vulnerable for approximately 48 hours. Don't read into it. I'm reading into all of it. The warmth between us changed registers, went quieter, more concentrated. Her eyes dropped to my mouth for half a second. I saw it. She knew I saw it. Neither of us moved. Then Walt's voice carried from down the hall. Hadley, you want the shelf centered over the desk, or shifted a couple inches left to account for the sight line from the doorway. Hadley went completely still. I looked at the ceiling. There's a shelf. There may be a shelf, she confirmed, with the composure of someone holding a very small dam together with both hands. Walt, she called back with a calm that was a work of fiction, Please stop narrating. Heard, Walt said. A pause. Also, for the record, I think it looks great. Thank you, Walt. 5 days of work came out clean. Walt. Gone. Completely gone. You won't hear from me again. I raised an eyebrow at Hadley. She pressed her lips together. There may also be a small framed print. Is the print related to how you feel about me? She said nothing, which was its own answer. I leaned against the counter. What does it say? Something I thought I'd have time to decide whether to leave up or take down before you got back. She exhaled. It says something you said, about a year ago, about a room. I went still. I thought back through our conversations. Coffee shops, her rooftop, the back of her car after concerts, a bar near 5 Points on a loud Saturday night when the sound system was genuinely good and I'd gotten sentimental about acoustics. She'd let me go without making fun of me for it. The best room, I'd said, isn't the one that sounds perfect. It's the one that sounds like somewhere you'd want to stay. I'd been talking about the bar, or I'd been talking about something else and using the bar as cover. Before either of us could say anything else, Walt appeared in the hallway doorway carrying his toolbox. He stopped when he saw us standing close together in the kitchen. He looked at Hadley. He looked at me. He looked at the coffee maker, apparently for context. Oh, he said, so this is happening. Walt, Hadley said. I support it. We're aware. I just want you to know, he pointed at Hadley. She drove to 3 different stores to find the right light temperature for that room. 3 stores. For light bulbs. Walt, I will never speak to you again. That's fine, I've got grandkids. He picked up his bag and gave me a nod. You should let her show you before she overthinks it into the ground. Also, the shelf bracket's rated for 40 pounds, so don't go heavy on it. He paused at the door. Nice to finally meet you, by the way. She talks about you a lot. Then he was gone. The door clicked shut. The apartment settled into quiet. 3 stores, I said. The light temperature matters. Hadley looked at our hands. She was still standing close. I reached for one of them. On purpose this time, she went still for half a second, then held on. I'm scared, she said. I know. Not about the room. I know that too. She swallowed. What if trying this changes the way everything fits? What if I stop being the person you actually talk to and start being the person you have to manage? You've never been manageable a day in your life. Nash. I'm serious. I held her hand more firmly. I don't want to manage you. I want to keep arguing with you about acoustics in bars at 11 on weeknights. Her eyes got bright. That's a very low bar for a relationship pitch. You like low bars. They're structurally honest. She laughed. A real one, the kind she couldn't engineer, and I felt it somewhere in my ribs. Then, my phone rang from inside my gear bag on the floor. I already knew who it was. Terry, my production coordinator in Portland, calling to tell me the generator situation had been resolved, and the shoot was resuming in 3 days. How long? I asked. 11 days to wrap, Terry said. Same rate. We'll cover flights. 11 days ago, I would have said yes before she finished the sentence. At 27, when someone offers you paid work in a field where half your colleagues are waiting tables between jobs, you don't hesitate, especially when your last invoice hadn't cleared yet and rent was in 10 days. I looked at the hallway, at Hadley, who had her arms folded now and was very carefully not listening with her entire body. I can be back Thursday, I said. 11 days, hard cutoff. I'm not available for any extension past that. Hadley looked up sharply. Terry said, I need some flexibility on. I'm not flexible on the end date. 11 days, same rate, and I need the schedule in writing by tomorrow morning. A pause. Okay, I can work with that. Then I'll see you Thursday. I hung up. Hadley was staring at me. You negotiated, she said. I had a reason to. She looked down, quiet for a moment. I don't want to be the reason you start feeling trapped here. You're not trapping me. You say that now. Hadley. I stepped closer. I spent 5 weeks in the Bitterroot Valley recording wind through ponderosa pines and thinking about your voice memos of weird sounds and the way you texted me the exact observation I needed at exactly the right time. I didn't stay away because I wanted to. I stayed because I hadn't given myself permission to want what I wanted. She was very still. I want you, I said, not because you built me a room. You could have done absolutely nothing to this apartment, and I'd still be having this exact conversation with you right now. I held her gaze. But I want to see the room, and I want to be the person who comes home to it. She let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for months. Then she reached for my hand and led me down the hallway. I'd been in my spare room 1,000 times. I knew every irritating thing about it, the door that stuck in humidity, the single outlet in the worst possible location, the window that let in street noise from outside. I'd taped acoustic foam to the walls and watched it slide down. I'd promised myself I'd fix it properly every month for 2 years. Hadley opened the door. For a second, I didn't process what I was seeing. It was still my room. That was what got me first. She hadn't erased it. The window still faced the same direction. My old mic stand was in the corner where I'd always left it. But everything else had become what it was supposed to be. The foam panels were mounted properly in an arrangement that actually addressed the room's early reflections. She must have researched the geometry or had Wall consult someone because it wasn't close to right. It was right. The cables were run neatly along the baseboard and up to a small patch bay on the desk. The desk itself was solid wood, nothing flashy, but the correct height and depth. With a pull-out keyboard shelf I didn't own yet but had mentioned wanting about 8 months ago, once, in passing. My Neumann TLM 102 sat on a proper stand with a shock mount pointing into the room. My dad had saved up for that mic and given it to me the year before things between us got quiet. I'd kept it even when I could have upgraded, because some things you don't trade away regardless. There was a rug on the floor, warm-toned, the kind that made a room feel like someone had thought about it. And above the desk, mounted level on a small wooden shelf, was a framed print. Navy background, clean white type, no decoration. The best room isn't the one that sounds perfect. It's the one that sounds like somewhere you'd want to stay. My throat closed. I'd said that. At a bar on a loud Saturday night, half serious, talking about acoustics and meaning something else entirely. She'd heard it, she'd kept it. She'd put it on a wall. Hadley stayed by the door. I wasn't going to show you until the light was better, she said, and until I decided whether the print was too much. I've been going back and forth on the print for 4 days. Don't take it down. You haven't fully processed it yet. I've processed it. I turned back to her. This is the most thought anyone has ever put into something for me. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. Her eyes were bright. It's just a room. It's not just a room, and you know it. She looked at the floor. I know. I crossed the space between us. She looked up. Are we ruining something? She asked. No. How do you know? Because ruining something feels different than this. What does this feel like? I put my hands on either side of her face, which I'd been thinking about since the kitchen. She went still. Her eyes searched mine. Like I came home early, I said, and finally understood why. And I kissed her. Not cautiously, not accidentally, not in a way that left either of us wondering what it meant. Slowly enough that she could stop me. She didn't stop me. Her hands found my forearms, and she rose slightly and kissed me back with the focused certainty she brought to everything. And for a second, the room did exactly what she'd built it to do. It sounded like somewhere you'd want to stay. We both needed air eventually. She stepped back, cheeks flushed, and looked at the ceiling. Well, she said, I have officially lost the ability to be casual around you ever again. Good. Easy for you to say. Hadley. I tipped her chin up. I leave Thursday. 11 days. And when I come back, I want to take you somewhere with a real menu and a reservation. She studied me. A date. Yes. You're asking me on a date. That's generally what that sentence means. A long pause. Long enough that I started to recalibrate. Then, you're not going to get out to Montana and this was an extremely emotional Tuesday and rethink it. I decided this about 6 months ago, I said. I just needed a good enough reason to stop pretending I hadn't. Something in her face settled. Not new, more like something that had always been there, finally allowed to show. Okay, she said quietly. Come back on purpose. We ate dinner at my kitchen table that night. She'd made chicken soup from scratch, which she claimed was unrelated to any emotional state, and which was obviously entirely related to her emotional state. We talked for 3 hours about things we'd talked around for 18 months. We let the soup go lukewarm. When she left around 10, I walked her to her car, and she kissed me on the sidewalk, quick and certain, then got in and drove away without looking back, which was very Hadley. I stood there for a moment. Then I went upstairs, sat at my new desk, and turned on the monitors. The room was quiet in the way I'd been describing for years without quite believing I'd find it. Still, attentive, like the air was paying attention. I sent Hadley a voice memo, just 30 seconds of it. The sound of a room that had been built to hold something worth hearing. She sent back a voice memo of her car idling at a red light. That's my sound, she wrote underneath. The one I make when I'm trying not to smile too much. Thursday morning, she dropped me off at B&A at 6 a.m., still half asleep, wearing my Vanderbilt hoodie again, which she had apparently decided was hers now, a development I had zero complaints about. She didn't cry. She made fun of my carry-on organization. She told me not to record anything boring. At the security line, she handed me a small envelope. Plain only. Inside was a photo she'd taken of my desk in the new room, the framed print visible above it in morning light. On the back, she'd written 7 words, "It'll sound the same when you get back, so will I." I kept it in my jacket pocket for all 11 days. I came home on a Sunday. She was waiting at arrivals holding a handmade cardboard sign that read "Welcome back" slightly, less emotionally avoidant in thick block letters. People near the rental car counter definitely saw it. Hadley definitely knew they saw it. She held it higher. I kissed her in the middle of baggage claim. She hid her face against my shoulder. I regret the sign. No, you don't. I really don't. Our first official date was that Tuesday. A small place in Germantown with low lighting and a menu on a chalkboard, and a sound system doing exactly the right things. We argued about whether the reverb on the speakers was natural or added. I said natural. She said added, then proved it by the way. The sound shifted when the couple next to us left and opened up the room. She was right. She was always right. Afterward, we went back to my apartment, and she sat in the chair at my new desk and spun slowly the way you do when something fits exactly the way you wanted it to. Then she looked up at me. It sounds right. Yeah, I said, it does. A year later, I kept a framed photo on the desk beside the Newman, Hadley and me at the bar in 5 Points where I'd first said that sentence about rooms. Both of us mid-law at something I can't even remember anymore, her hand on my arm. Neither of us knowing yet that we were already inside the thing we were too careful to name. She'd found it on her phone, a photo she'd taken that night without me realizing. Evidence she texted when she sent it, that we were always this. I had it printed the same week. It's been on that desk ever since. What would you have done if you came home early and your best friend froze in your kitchen and said, "Don't go in the back room"? And have you ever looked back at a moment from a long time ago and realized it was already the beginning? You just hadn't caught up to it yet? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this one, leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.